Welcome to the Seafood Matters podcast. I'm your host, Jim Cowie. In each episode, I speak with industry leaders, fishery scientists, fishermen, and seafood chefs. We'll highlight the importance of seafood in our daily lives, economy, and environment. Whether you catch your own seafood, love cooking it, or want to learn more about where your fish comes from, you'll find it all here on the Seafood Matters podcast. If you enjoy this episode, hit subscribe, share it with a friend, or leave a 5-star review. And you can get in touch with me by visiting seafoodmatterspodcast.com. Emma Plotnek is Executive Director, and David Stevens is Chairman of the Board of Trustees of Fishing into the Future, a charity which aims to chart a course towards sustainable fisheries. In this episode, Emma and David discuss their unique learning experiences and shared participation events, explaining how Fishing into the Future serves as an effective bridge between the fishing industry, scientists and fisheries managers. Emma Plotnek, David Stephen, welcome to Seafood Matters podcast. It's great to have you on the show. I've read a lot and seen a lot about fishing into the future. Can you tell us your background and how you arrived in the organisation? Emma, first.
Me first. I probably have the less interesting story, but I don't know, maybe I don't. I studied marine science at university. And I had the opportunity while I studied marine science to do lots of experience working with fishermen on vessels, talking to fishermen. I was up in Newcastle, so talking to communities in the northeast. I kind of realised that I wasn't as good as the science part and I was much better at the people part. So I kind of spent a bit of time abroad. I lived in Chile for a while after spending time working in fisheries in Latin America and working with fishermen in Latin America. It was pandemic time and I was looking for a bit of a shake-up and a change, and this job opportunity popped up at Fishing into the Future and I applied, had a couple of really interesting interviews chatting to our board of trustees, which is 2/3 fishermen, so it's a lot of industry people, and it seemed a really good fit for me, and I think I seemed like a good fit for the organisation. So they offered me the job and within a couple of weeks I moved back from Chile and was here getting comfortable in a new role.
And as the saying goes, the rest is history.
Yeah, the rest is history. I had to learn. Even though I've got a lot of experience, I had a lot of experience working in fisheries. I had never worked in the UK in fisheries. So I had a lot to learn when I got this job. I had to understand the whole panorama here. And we're 3 years in now, and I think I'm just about getting there.
Great. Oh, well, that's good. You seem very positive. You're definitely a glass half full kind of person.
Yeah.
David, yourself, you're a fisherman. Have you always been?
Fishing's a long family tradition for us. So we're at Stevens. We're originally from St Ives, and although we fished out in Noonan for many years, our history is St Ives, and we can go back, I think, to the 13th century. So I'm going quite back away. And the story was that we were cattle drovers from Ireland, from a town called Dungarvan, and we got shipwrecked in Zena, which is a very small village on the near St Ives, just outside of St Ives. And we slowly made our way towards St Ives, fishing along the way. And then that's been our family history for, well, as you say, many generations. So my dad's a fisherman, his dad before him, and many before him. So I would go in as a youngster with my dad, helping to land. And if he's in there on poor weather days, mending nets, we'd be in there filling the needles for the dad. And that was me and my brother. Very young age, we're quite close in age. Me and my brother, there's only 18 months between us. So we've kind of grown up with fishing and grown into fishing, and it's always been a part of our lives. So when I went to leave school at 15, which is 1990, I couldn't wait to go fishing. And that's what I've been doing since then. But in that time, it's 34 years now, it's certainly changed. A lot's happened. As a family, we've sort of progressed through the industry together, which has been great. I've really enjoyed that. We've gone on to sort of work our way up to going from an older boat to newer boats, and then eventually we got the opportunity to build a boat, which was a great experience for us all. So at the moment, me and my brother are working the boat, and we work it together on a sort of trip on, trip off basis. And when we're ashore, we're busy with the nets and getting gear ready for the next trip for when we go again. So as everyone knows, you're involved in fishing. It's a way of life. It's full time, and you're totally committed to it. And that's just us, really. We're a fishing family and totally committed to the industry.
It definitely is a way of life, that's for sure. I think that's the same right around the world, probably, but certainly around the UK. And as a friend of mine once says, the fishing is not an occupation, it's a disease.
Yeah.
One of the things that really impresses me about your organisation, which I'm looking forward to chatting in more detail about, and I think it's the important part, it's about really something that's only as good as the people you've got around you. And I think it's a pretty impressive show you have there. Looking at yourself as chairman, Adrian, who I'm good friends with for a lot of years, as a vice chairman, and looking at the trustees, I go back a long way with David Anderson. We knew him as Davy Anderson. And Mike Kaiser, Mike Park. You've got a tremendous knowledge base there.
Yeah, no, it certainly is, Jim. And we're very lucky to have so many great people involved. And I know when I first joined Fish in the Future, it was like, these guys want me to join with them because they already had impressive careers, and it was a privilege really to join. But I've learned a huge amount by being involved. I've really quite enjoyed my time. I think I've been involved for around about 5 years, 6 years maybe, Fish in the Future. And I've just learned so much along the way from all of the people who are involved. There's a lot of fishermen involved from all over the country, and a lot of scientists involved from all different types of science. We've got Hazel Curtis who used to work at Seafish, economist. So, she brings all of her experience there. Being involved with Fishmongers Company, that's been really interesting too. So it's been really interesting and quite good fun. And we're just looking forward to seeing how far now we can sort of take it around the core values of what Fish in the Future wants to set out to achieve.
Yeah, I should maybe stop there and say, sorry, Hazel, because when I mentioned the names of your trustees, I wasn't going to go down the whole list, or there's nobody I forgot about. It's just that I know the people I mentioned really well. But I do know Hazel. She's been in Seafish a lot of years, and she's got great respect within the fishing industry up in Scotland here. So yeah, you're right. Another good person to be on board.
Yeah, I was also going to mention the American element, Jim, because Alexa Dayton is also part of it. She's been doing this for many years in America, over 20 years, I think. And this idea was, I think, between her and Hazel, if I remember rightly, of setting up Fish in the Future. And we've learned a lot from that American experience, from what Alexa's done in America. And we're very lucky to have her as part of Fish in the Future as well, because she brings all of that experience of all that hard learning that they've been through co-management in America. So, yeah, it really is a great cooperative of really, really outstanding people.
Yeah, the only thing I'd feel you're possibly not doing yourself any justice. You're telling me how good the others are, but I think you'll probably, if I'm speaking to the others, I think there'll be a good input coming from yourself.
I do my bit. But it's still,
you're still learning.
Well. You're still learning. And yeah, I've just really enjoyed that experience. There's always plenty to learn.
I think it's so important. And the thing that I really like about what you do is the way you've got so many important people from throughout the industry sitting around the table talking to each other. You can't have too much of that.
Yeah, I just wanted to add as well, I think something really interesting about what we do, and maybe Dave can talk about more about like his experience, how he came to be part of Fishing into the Future. So I do a lot of our governance, and I am reaching out to people who we want to join our board of trustees. And usually if you reach out to like a scientist or someone in government, and you ask them to be part of this really cool initiative, they're very excited. And you might reach out to a fisherman and they're going to be way more skeptical, I think, a lot of the time about what we do and why we're doing this. Almost all of our fishing trustees have kind of come on board after coming to one of our events. And Dave, I mean, that's exactly how you did it, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I came to the event. I got invited by Alan Steer at the time and Jim. I'd never been to the event. I'd read about the Fishing the Future and the work they were doing, but I'd never got the opportunity to go. It was never in my local area. So when they came to Darlington, I joined then. And yeah, I was really blown away by it. I thought I knew a bit about fishery science and getting involved, but yeah, it was just great. It was eye-opening. I think for any fisherman who comes along and you then get sort of tutorials on how we go about stock assessments and tidal movements and a whole range of how the ecosystem works. And then you take it from your perspective, what you've learned over your career. And what I was finding, what I've learned over my career in fishing about sort of fish movements and seasonality changes and tidal movements, I was actually then looking at that in science, in a scientific sense, certainly when Mike Kaiser did his presentations. What I used to write down in my diaries about tidal barriers and tidal movements, he'd obviously gone out and done a lot of research and put there in science. So it really helped me understand far more about some of the thoughts that I had are actually that they're actually real and they happen in many different places in many different ways. So it was really interesting. Just if you go along from can I improve my fishing point of view, it's a real help. Never alone can I improve my ability to collect data and help the system.
Yeah, but I know as a person, I can learn far more if there's a subject I'm wanting to know about. Anything to do with fishing or anything else, I would far rather think and find out somebody who knows about it, who's experienced in it, and speak to them rather than take a device and look it up. And that's what I feel you've got there. Access to brilliant advice on all aspects of the industry.
Yeah. So I was just going to nip in here and say that's one of the beautiful things I think that we create when we do our events is that people come along to them and then they're connected and they have each other's phone number. So we're not solving the nitty gritty of the problems when we're at our events, but people leave them and they can pick up the phone to one another. People from government can phone up people in industry who previously, they weren't in contact with one another, and they can hash out that knowledge and learn from each other and continue. We just build the foundation, and then after that, people go away, can work together more effectively.
Yeah. And I had a podcast earlier today. It's obviously not published yet, but with a good friend of mine, Alan Addison. He's on a boat called the Venture. And I was saying to him that I've had a few podcasts recently with scientists, two from ICES, and they were saying about the new younger scientists coming through. They're very much of the mind that they want to speak more with fishermen and do trials together. And it wasn't what I wanted to hear, but I respect and admired his answer. He says, well, Jim, I don't see it.
No, I think he's right. At the moment, I think that ability to create that co-management network, I think all of the ingredients are there. It's just we haven't got the mix right yet. And I think that's something that Fishing the Future is going to work very hard to do. And we've had good success in the past and we built foundations then, but things have changed now. We've gone through Brexit. We've got an idea of how things are looking. The fishery management plans are in place. So we're slowly building our own fisheries-based management in the UK away from the top-down management that we have from the EU. So when you look at when individual countries do this type of thing that they've done for many years, like New Zealand and the United States, what you find is all the building blocks that we're now seeing post coming away from the EU, we're now putting in place very, very similar type of plans and approaches to what happens in the rest of the world, because that's just how it works best. But what we haven't got is that long tradition of fishermen, scientists and managers coming into a room and just working together and solving the problems together on a UK scale. We've done it on a small scale. I've worked with scientists in the past and managers to solve problems in say just my fishery on an individual basis, and that's been done, replicated right across the UK with individual fishermen. And I know, Alan, you mentioned with Alan, he's done that in the past. But are we seeing that joined up thinking across the UK yet? No. And we're certainly encouraging government to do that. And I think what they found out at the event, what I hope, well, I think they did find it out at the event, they certainly said so, that I think they were worried that the industry didn't have that capability, the fishery management plans, to the fishery to come together and create that co-management. And I think they very quickly seen that we do have that, and they've seen how it's going to happen, because we're all learning. The managers don't know exactly what to do. I think that's quite clear with some of the outputs we've had. The scientists are not 100% clued up on how to do this, and nor is the industry. So we've got to go around the world and look for learning experiences. And with Fishing Future, we've got that. We've got the American experience and how to do that. 20 years of hard work down the road of co-management. The roads not to go down, the roads to go down. And I think when we do the events, people very quickly find out how it's going to be done. We're solving that problem. We just have to keep going out there, doing the events, giving people that confidence to be able to take that approach. And that's not just fishermen, that's government and scientists as well.
Yeah. Am I right in saying Mike Park is a trustee, is he?
Yeah, Mike is.
Yes.
Yeah, Mike Park definitely is.
Yeah. He's got a great respect all over. He did a podcast with me recently, and the number of people I've spoken to, from government to scientists and fellow fishermen, have an enormous respect for him, and he's got a fantastic knowledge and experience, so he'll be invaluable as well.
Oh, definitely. And the work that he's done around the North Sea and on the western coast of Scotland, they're really making great strides ahead. They're well ahead of where we are in the English Channel and Area 7. And because he has that mix of long experience working with the Scottish whitefish producers, being a fisherman himself, and being involved in how to build these scientific research programs and engaging fishermen to do it. It is out there. We can do this. We've just got to bring it all together, and all that experience that is out there, pull it together and make it happen across the UK. But building those blocks and building that ability to communicate, I think that's the key. I mean, Emma would know, she's daily speaking to different areas of the industry, so she'll know the challenges in that part.
Before I go on about fishing into the future, Dave, as a fisherman, what kind of fishing do you do? What do you catch, and where would you fish out of and land?
Well, I work out in Newlyn in Cornwall. We're a whitefish trawler, so we're fishing all year round, whitefish, twin rig trawling. Quite a mix of species, a huge amount, because we're on that border down here. We've got subtropical species and your traditional type species. So I think last count there's something like 30, 40 different species that we're catching, and a dozen of them will be quite considerable quantities of what we're targeting. So your usual, your anglerfish, your megrams, hake, haddock, whiting, red mullets, John Dories, a mixture of quota and non-quota species. That's what we're targeting.
Is there a squid fishery down there still?
There is. It wasn't as prolific as it used to be, because we've lost that sort of the squid that they're now sort of catching on the west coast of Scotland and in the Murray Firth. And that squid is not so happy in the warmer water that we have now. But I think what really has come on is the cuttle fishing. In my lifetime fishing, the cuttlefish are very abundant now for a long period of time. So as we're losing one species of fish, we're gaining others. So we're losing our gadwall type species because of the warming water, like your haddock, your whiting, and your cod. But then that's being replaced with more subtropical species that are here for far longer than they ever were. So like John Dories and bass and red mullet. So it's in huge flux at the moment, and things are changing, and just trying to keep pace with all of that scientifically and as fishermen is quite difficult.
The cuttles will be a boost to you, because I take it there'll be no leasing costs or quota issues.
Yeah, they're a big help to the industry. I would have said they've pretty much underpinned the industry in the southwest at the moment, certainly tow gear vessels. And yeah, they're an important species now. They're very prolific, and yeah, it's good. Long may they not have quota.
Yeah. Now, if we could get back to fishing into the future, what is the organisation? What does it do? Tell our listeners just what you achieve.
We could probably give like an organisational perspective and I guess like a fisherman's perspective as well, which would probably be quite interesting. But I don't mind starting and kind of giving you the elevator speech about what we do. So we are an organisation that is built, I mean, I'm not a fisherman, but I take all of my knowledge and guidance from a wonderful board of trustees. So we're built by fishermen, we're led by fishermen. And what we do is we create opportunities for fishermen and people in the fishing industry, for scientists and people working in research, and for people working in the government to work together more effectively. We do that through a number of ways, but the main way we do it is through these kind of 3-day residential events where we bring everyone together to learn together, to share. And through that, we manage to, well, what our goals of what we're aiming to do is to help everyone build connections, exchange knowledge, and have the confidence and the skills in order to be able to engage in industry-led science and collaborative science, which will underpin effective co-management. So everyone is involved in the management process.
Yeah. Your meeting, you've got one coming off quite soon, I take it. What do you hope to achieve with that, and what will happen there?
So I guess, I joined the organisation in a bit of a tumultuous time. It was COVID, it was Brexit was going on. There was really big changes. And I think we had to pivot a little bit how we work as an organisation at that time as well. So with kind of the dawn of the fisheries management plans, we've got, 42 fisheries management plans? They're going to be rolled out over the next couple of years pretty rapidly. It's a very good place for us to work collaboratively with everyone and have a focus on a specific area where people can work together more effectively. So the idea is at the moment is that we ran one in Southampton or near to Southampton in November, and we've got one coming up in York, and they focus on different regions and different fisheries management plans. So the one we've got coming up in York is more focused on shellfish. So we've got a lot of potters coming. So we've got people who are fishing for crab, lobster. We've got some scallop fishermen. We actually even have a couple of guys coming who fish for nephrops, which I know is a really drastically different species. But the idea is that people can come to these events and they gain, and I'm not just talking about the fishermen, I'm talking about everyone who's involved in these fisheries management plans, including the scientists and the government. They gain the skills to go away and then work together in the working groups for fisheries management plans in a better way. So that's the focus, but we know that aside from that, people are also better at working together in fisheries management plans. They're going to improve their skills at working together in all different areas of consultations, of conflict between marine space. So all of these conversations ideally will be enriched and improved by having discussions and us coming together those 3 days.
And the findings of that meetings, where are they taken?
What do you mean by the findings? Like what?
Your meeting, what you've decided, or is there decisions taken, or is it a meeting of minds?
Yeah, so it's funny, isn't it? I got approached the other day and someone was like, oh, can we put this really important subject on the agenda? It was about marine protected areas. Can we do a session on this one specific discussion on marine protected areas? And I know that there's just a giant bucket of issues that we could dig into for 3 days and just talk about this one issue. The focus of what we want to do is we want to prepare everyone to be able to come away from the room and have those conversations. Those conversations do happen. They happen in the bar at night. They happen in the coffee breaks. But what we are specifically trying to do is to give people kind of that baseline knowledge to be able to have those conversations and create spaces for those conversations outside of what we do. And we've already seen difficult topics being discussed between fishermen and management and science. And we've already kind of heard echoes of people being like, oh, we should do something like Fishing into the Future style and have fishermen facilitating this conversation and make sure everyone's invited and everyone's in the room and that we're transparent about what we talk about and that we co-create the agenda. And the agenda we talk about in this meeting, we should ask everyone what should be on the agenda. So we're just trying to set an example of better ways of working together. Yeah, David, I don't know if you've got anything to add on to that.
Yeah, just from a fisherman perspective, I came to it a little bit later in my career. I was past 40. So I gained a little bit of experience with doing the type of scientific work because I was just interested in doing that. And politically, I'd been involved with my local PO. So I'd had a little bit of experience, but that took a long time to learn that. And I think what we're doing, especially for the younger fishermen who come along who are interested, is we're giving them that learning experience and they're learning a lot of things that took me, say, 20 years to learn. And they're learning that very, very quickly, because in the United States, where they've had this for a long time, they've seen fishermen come in from a young age, learn about fishery science, understand their fisheries much better. So they take a better approach to their fishery once they've understanding the science and their role within the fishery and what they can do to improve things and why they're doing those things. That's important. Why are you putting technical measures in your net? Why do they talk about recruitment years? Why do they talk about biomass? Answering a lot of the questions that you're too afraid to ask, actually, a lot of the time, because we don't want to feel silly when we're asking those questions. I can remember feeling like that. So we're giving them that learning experience. So then when they then are, luckily, a lot of the people who've been to the event and are trustees of Fishing the Future are then being asked to be involved with fisheries management after that, because government are recognising that they've been through the course of Fishing in the Future, that they're better prepared to the challenges of fishery management and understanding the arguments. And in America, they have like a hierarchy system. So it doesn't just stop at FMPs. There's higher above that again, which is the Fisheries Council, which is a little bit equivalent to what we had the RACs within the EU. So the Western Waters RACs and North Sea RACs. So as people gain experience within the industry and within sort of the management discussions of how to manage their industry, if they're doing well and they're understanding it very well and they're engaging well and negotiating well, they get moved up a tier and then speak for a larger body of the audience, a larger body of the industry. So it's just naturally building that sort of career progression. But you're adding in that scientific background, that managerial background that we don't always get access to as fishermen, that we don't always get to learn. And that's what I like about it, that we're able to teach those things. And that teaching is coming from people with that experience already.
Is there anybody connected to government on board?
Yeah, we've got on our board of trustees, we've got Phil McBride from DEFRA. He's on our board of trustees. He's on as an independent person because he's an expert who's worked in fisheries management. So it's not that we have, all of our board of trustees kind of give their time voluntarily and work independently as a part of our board of trustees. But I think also a lot of us work really hard to build relationships with people working in fisheries from all different areas and what we want to achieve as an organization, which is helping people work together more effectively and working towards co-management and working towards this collaborative science. So we do also, to an extent, have the air of, we chat to people in government. I have standing meetings with people in government and we talk about effective ways that how we think we could be working better together, trying to connect people in to these conversations. I don't think we'd ever say that we have the answer and we're a non-political organization, but we just want to make sure that there is a fair voice for the industry to be able to be involved and engage in a representative voice of the industry. We often say that there are thousands of fishermen working around the coast and they don't all need to answer a consultation on REM. Not every fisherman needs to be answering the consultations that go out for the fisheries management plans, but we need to make sure that every group that is working within the industry is fairly represented in these conversations. And there are some people who have got excellent representatives who channel down information and feed it back, and they have their voice heard. And we know that there's areas all over the UK where people's voices don't properly come across because they haven't got the right representation and they're not organised. And there's a number of different social reasons why that's happening. But if we can play our part to help people be part of these important conversations that are happening in fisheries management and science, that's where we're going to try and focus to improve this.
Something that worked well on the back of that, what Emma's just said, at the last event that we did at the channel, was we were able to bring the local CICs and the POs together that all work within that area. And then there was obviously fishermen there who didn't have any representation at all. So we was able to bring them all together in that room, and some of them had never met before and never had those good working relationships, and thought PO was big and bad and the CIC was too small. But they all found a lot of common ground, and they've gone away and they formed a channel working group where the POs and the CICs are working together and in regular contact from being involved with the Fishing in the Future event. And also the people who didn't have representation who were there, because we've got access to Fishmongers Company and Alison, particularly at Fishmongers Company, we're able to put the work that fishmongers do around the coast. So they've been instrumental in setting up a lot of the CICs. So it's given a lot of fishermen who are there saying, look, those CICs are going to work for us. We're local, we're small, we've got particular issues, but we're all connected. We can bring each other together through a CIC. So what we're able to do is just facilitate building that network that is very much needed across the country, particularly in our area where representation isn't good. So we're able to sort of help build that so government knows who then they're communicating with.
Yeah. If I could just ask you to explain to our listeners, Dave, what's CIC?
Oh, sorry, community interest companies.
That's with you all the way there, and I think it's invaluable to have the connections that you have and to have DEFRA on board. I would have imagined you would, an added complication that when you're talking to Scotland, you have a different government and Marine Scotland as well, so it's not one body throughout the whole country.
Yeah, but we listen to the people who are in that area who've got that experience. So obviously there's people we know in Northern Ireland and people involved who are in Scotland. So we would say listen to Mike and what the fishermen say about how you approach it in Scotland and take their advice. So we form a working group. So if we were going to set an event up anywhere in the country, we'd form a working group from that area and from that focus, that whatever we're going to focus on. So we're doing one on shellfish. So the people involved in that are the scientists are going to give the presentations, the fishermen are involved in shellfish, and the people from that area, so they can give us a network that we have from the Fishing Future. We can bring in that expertise and what happens in the local area. And that would be the same whether we was going to Northern Ireland to do that or Scotland. So we can quickly find the people who can help us understand how the network is working.
So I just add in on that. I didn't want us to sound too England focused. It's just because our next event is coming up in York. But Dave's completely right. We are connected in with people in the Scottish government, in the Northern Irish government, got really good connections in Wales as well. We've got this board of trustees where people stretch from being located all over the coast, and we reach out to them.
There's one thing you forgot there, Emma, when you were talking about Scotland. One of your trustees, I think trustee, correct me if I'm wrong, and if you're in the bar after it, I'm sure you'll agree, nobody can tell a story like Jimmy Buchan.
Yeah, he's great fun.
Do you know, it's funny because when I was at university like 15 years ago now, and we used to watch Trawler Men, he was famous among my friends, and I joined Fishing into the Future, and I gave all of the trustees a call when I joined. I just wanted to say hello, say who I was, and I called Jimmy Buck, and I was a little bit starstruck because he was the famous Jimmy Buchan of Trawler Men that I used to watch. I spent all Sundays watching 8 back-to-back episodes of.
And catching prawns in the Devil's Hole.
Yeah, it's really, our board of trustees what makes us special. I think is just the way I can rely on people, and the way their energy to support what we do is quite magical. So
yeah. Where I was coming from, Dave, with yourself, communications and asking about government or that. In my podcast with my friend Alan, he has a real genuine concern here. And he feels that the people here in Scotland are not listening, and we need to get, and that is, he feels what's really seriously damaging, not his pay packet or the business, but the future of the fishing industry, is what he classes the static gear guys with the gill nets and longliners. They're non-UK boats. I'm sure you've got them down there. But he reckons that they alone, one boat, will be taking between 1.5 and 2 ton of disused gear ashore. And I'm in Scrabster every other day, and when they're landing, that non-UK boats, they don't take it in. And as he says, that if they don't catch them, take them in, it's affecting their gear as well and their fishing. So it's got serious implications on the future stocks. And he was giving me areas like a Westis and Kilda, where he says that there's just no fish left there, and even they've moved out of it because they just fish an area till it's completely clean, and then they move on with no thought to the future. And he's just so frustrated that they can't get anybody in government interested to do anything about it. And another thing, which I'm sure you'll know even better than me, is I think it's a shame there because they talk, here's Alan saying, about the static gear guys with the gill nets and longliners. But am I right in saying there's a gill net fishing down your way that is sustainable? So it's giving a bad name and reputation to a method of fishing that can be done sustainably.
It certainly can. It's done sustainably done our way. We've had static gear fishing longer than you've seen it in Scotland, and our vessels working out of Cornwall have worked it for many years, and they can go back to the same areas all the time. I see them bring their old gear in that needs repairing, and I think because they're close to the port, I think also it's important they're able to bring it in and they recycle the gear and they repair that, and that's done every trip. So it's just down to good practice and making sure good practice is happening. There's nothing wrong with that type of fishery. It's just the EU element of generally Spain. Let's not hold back from pointing fingers here, or flagged out to Germany, but they're still Spanish. They just don't have very good practices. And yeah, it's right. The fishermen are calling it out very strongly in Scotland, and I don't blame them. This sort of wasteful approach that they've got. How do we tackle that? How do we challenge it? Even that question itself, when you look at that, poses challenges for us, because to view their practices, you're either going to have to put more boardings out there and more focus on what they're doing, or do you do it remotely with cameras? But then that gives the problem for the industry. Well, yeah, we'd like that done, but not everybody wants cameras for everybody. So we can tackle this. It can be done better. Government should be listening to the fishermen. If they're going there with a genuine concern, they should be taking that up and making sure that something's done. But we get that on the Safe Coast as well. That's not just unique to Scotland. There's a big fear around the size of the seine net fleet now. It's gone from a traditional type seiners that we still have in the UK, around 600 horsepower and a sensible amount of gear, to the Dutch have gone into it like only the Dutch can, in a very large scale, and just doing it over the top with 1,200 horsepower boats. And it's having a big impact on the local fleet and the local populations of fish. Trying to get government to listen to us is extremely difficult from the point of it's a real problem. It needs to happen now, but the pace at which that they want to tackle it with the gill nets up in Scotland and the seine net down here, it almost feels, sometimes you wonder, is it that they're tipping over, they're treading lightly so they're not upsetting the trade and cooperation agreement by sort of coming down heavy on an EU state, or is it they just don't really understand the gravity of it? And that's what we need to understand first. So they understand the gravity, and what are we going to do about it?
I was going to say as well, I think there is a really important factor within this that is part of our mission, and like personally as well, I think it's something really important that you've got to ask the question, why are some people better at getting heard by government than other people? You've got big organizations that have the capacity to employ someone with the skills and knowledge to represent them. They might have practiced working in politics or practiced consulting, and you look at the skills and knowledge that other groups have that might not even work collectively. You might have groups of fishermen that are all out fishing because the most important thing to them is going out fishing and making a living and putting food on their table and doing what they love. And we can't bypass the fact that it's important that everyone gets their voice heard. It is a two-way thing. Government needs to understand that not everyone's voice can be heard in one specific way. So not everyone can go online and respond to a consultation that is on a government website. There needs to be more effective ways of gathering people's voices and listening to people. But also there's a responsibility, I think, on the fishing industry to work collectively and to work in a really smart way to make themselves heard. But that does require resources. That requires time. It probably requires someone with a different skill set to a fisherman to be able to effectively engage with government. So all of these things, they're things that we discuss within our events, and it's things that we discuss kind of more broadly in our conversations that we have with different people we're in contact with.
Am I right for imagining that having people from DEFRA on board with yourselves, well, that's a start?
Yeah, it is, because when you get all of the fishermen in the room, so what happens when we go into a room, it's quite interesting to explain the setup. Generally, we get fishermen sort of sit in a horseshoe shape. and they sit on the front seats, and then we have the scientists and the managers sat behind them. So the fishermen are front and centre. So what they want to raise and their concerns get heard by the entirety of the room. And then we have moderators who are fishermen moderators generally, or Emma or Hazel, and we help moderate the argument. And so DEFRA here, then, if a lot of fishermen are saying the same thing in that room, and fishermen that they've never met, and they might have heard this from the past from industry reps, but they've never heard all of the fishermen saying the same thing. I think that's quite powerful, because they then are constantly looking at, are we consulting enough? Are we getting the right information in? Well, you've got a full room of fishermen from one area who are saying the same thing and are saying, this is a real worry, this is a real challenge. So they're hearing that loud and clear. So that's something that we're able to do. So we want to come to Scotland next. So we're definitely going to have to come up and get involved and help solve some of these challenges and get fishermen's voice, their concerns definitely heard.
You'll find when you do come north, if you have the fishermen together with the department people, it's not a mediator you'll need, it's a referee.
Yeah. Also, I wanted to say, I mean, so these are the first two events we've done, what we're doing at the moment, the first two events that we've done since the pandemic, since I joined Fishing Into the Future. Previous to that, like half the events we were doing were always in Scotland. It's quite funding dependent. So for these two events, I got funding from the UK Fast Fund, which is England only. So I have to hold the events in England. But at both our events, we do have people invited coming down from Scotland. We're very much looking forward to doing something north of the border soon. And I also just wanted to, I've just got up, because I'm full blown in my planning mode at the moment for our next event. And I've just got up our list of people attending. We've got a total over the 3 days of 66 people. Some of them are coming and going, but there's about 55 that are just going to be there over those 3 days. 37 of those people are fishing industry people. So we've got over 30 people. I've got them down as catchers, so actual fishermen, 5 representatives, 1 person from retail and 1 person who's an industry scientist. And then we've got 8 scientists. We've got 13 people from government, including MMO, DEFRA, the IFCAs and the MCA. And then we've got 3 people kind of from funding and charity area. And then 1 person from media. So we've got Fishing News joining us. So it's you can see we've got a really diverse range of people, but the majority of people who are going to be in that room are going to be fishermen and people who are working in the fishing industry. And that is what I will not let the numbers of non-fishermen exceed the numbers of fishermen. That's really important for us as an organisation.
I think it's good that they have a strong voice and they're in numbers. What you said earlier, Dave, that there's a lot of them in the room saying the same thing, because that's powerful, that people can't ignore that, because not everybody's wrong. And it's just exactly going back to one of the points Alan made earlier, is that there's a tendency with fishermen, or has been in the past, which I'm sure you'll get, is that they would almost not be trusted, and almost like he would say that anyway, wouldn't he? But it seems as if you're getting over that.
Yeah, I think that's the whole idea behind it. And you said earlier we'd need a referee in the room for certain places. I think everyone feels like that about the difference that we have sometimes between management and industry. But actually, fact, when we've held the events, and that's always been our fear, is everyone going to get on? But the atmosphere that's created, we set the rules out from the beginning, and we create the atmosphere of learning. And we're learning from each other, and that's well explained at the beginning. So everyone opens their mind a little bit about let's work hard to get on and understand the differences. And what we find is the fishermen get to speak obviously first and more clearly and more loudly through the meeting. The management step back a little bit and listen more so than talking at us, which normally happens at meetings with management. And they're listening to the industry, and they're slowly, on that first day, we're taking people through scientific stock assessment details and stuff like that of learning, getting to see the fishermen learning and reacting, and along the way they're hearing the fishermen's fears, and then they have a coffee break and they build those relationships and get to speak to the fishermen, and that fear that you've got, well, why is that, a little bit deeper. And then when we come around to talk about the difficult topics that we were worried about, those relationships are already formed. And management are in full listening mode, and so the industry. And then I think the fishermen are then finding, I've certainly found that myself, and I've seen that, they're finding that things do open up. The barrier is not there. Management seem to go from not listening to listening more, and they feel like they're getting somewhere. You've eroded those natural barriers just by having everyone in the same room for a good period of time and in the right situation.
Yeah, but also I found, and I'm sure you, Emma, that you will find the same from speaking to fishermen. You tell it practically, common sense approach, and fishermen will wear it.
I was going to say as well, one of the most important things about what we do, and this is something that when I speak to people in government or people working in research, we really, really encourage is it's not just me standing up there talking, facilitating the event. We have a planning team and we've got fishermen on that planning team and they help me facilitate. So if a conversation does get a bit out of hand, it's never me that has to bring everything back to focus. I will always rely on one of the people who actually know and work with these other people in the room who are getting emotional or riled up by a certain topic, and it will be them that help me bring the conversation or help us bring the conversation back to what we're focused on. Because I actually think it's disrespectful for me to approach someone and tell them to stop talking about a subject that's really important to them. That shouldn't be coming from me. That should be coming from one of their peers. Or I don't have the skills to talk to people in that way. You can only talk to people in the right way if you understand them. And you can only understand them if you're actually out fishing as well. So it's something we really champion is we help the fishermen who are on our board of trustees get the skills to facilitate events, and then we set them to work.
Yeah, but I think as David mentioned it earlier, going on from that, it's a way of life. And it is a way of life. Another thing we say here is we eat it, we drink it, and we sleep it.
Yeah, that's exactly as it is, Jim. And when fishermen come, there's everything's at stake. And I understand that as another fisherman. Their livelihoods are absolutely at stake. One decision that's made, I mean, you take something like the pollock that's happened this year, and there's been many instances like this over the years, 90% cut in the TAC, utterly ridiculous. And the fishermen have come in, sick with fear. And they really want their fears heard, and heard well. And that is a huge challenge, and that emotion that's there. And the idea is you kind of draw out those fears without it becoming, no one wants a shouting match, nor even the person who's trying to alleviate their fears. So, like I said earlier, the environment that they're in, they're amongst peers, they're amongst people who feel the same, and we can bring those fears out and bring the answers to some of that, not all the time, but we can certainly help them find answers and how they can help the situation by providing answers for themselves. We can find that route within what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah. And am I allowed to ask you if the MCA are at the meeting? They must get asked about ML5s.
We do have someone from the MCA joining our meeting. We didn't have someone join our last meeting, so I'll have to let you know how that goes afterwards. But I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions. Also, at the same time, like I said, we are not holding this meeting so they can get into the nitty gritty of like, what is the answer to this big question about the ML5? We're there so people from the MCA can have really good connections with people from the fishing industry and build understanding and build empathy. And our idea of this is that people go away and the policies that come out are more workable for everyone.
I think it's a great way to go. Definitely think you're in a great direction. How do you see it going forward? Obviously, it's fishing into the future. How do you see the future?
Well, for fishing in the future, you talk about, Jim, or the industry? Yeah, for fishing in the future, we're going to continue and build on the events. Events take quite a bit of time to put together. So 2 a year is certainly doable, but we'd certainly have to grow our staff a bit more if we wanted to go and do an extra event in a year, plus some of the other online events that we do, because we're not just about the events, in-person events. We do, through COVID, we had to sort of move into different areas of online, very much like we're doing with podcasts here now. We held online discussions and debates where we bring scientists in and fishermen together to look at challenges around things like net zero, looking at sort of the seining. That was another quite high topic, and really good attendances. And we were in fishermen on one call, was just great. I did enjoy it. We had a fisherman from America speaking about his experiences of REM. We had another fisherman who was in the middle of the North Sea, Andrew Ledley, and we was interviewing him. He's on board his boat in the middle of the North Sea. Many fishermen around the coast who are interested, and the managers who are wanting to look to implement this, and the scientists who are involved in it. So it can all be done online. It is very good. It's very complex. So that's just another part of what we do. And Emma's kept extremely busy with communicating with different fishermen, planning events, and planning online events. So I think, first of all, we need to sort of take stock of what we can do. We've only got Emma at the moment, plus the team of Fish in the Future, but we need to go out and prove our worth, prove our role in facilitating and helping all of this happening, which I feel we're doing. And if we can continue to do that, we need to be able to grow the team by certainly another member. We can do more. If the industry and science and management want this, we can do more. And I think while we've got the FMPs, it's going to be a very long process, and we need to build the skills to go into those FMPs. And I think government recognises that. I think while we're able to do that, and if we've got a team and funding to do that, then we will. But to give you some idea of the main goal, Alexa Dayton, when she set up MREP, which is Fishing into the Future in America, so she's doing it for the whole of America. And it was only, I think, last year, she said that they now get fully funded by government because they are recognised as essential to the co-management system that they have in America. And that took her 20 years. I hope it doesn't take us 20 years to achieve that. But that was a lot of hard work by them in America to achieve that. But that's where it's heading. I would hope we're heading. We are going to create that ability of engagement and learning between all sectors. And yeah, we've all got a lot to learn from each other.
You mentioned FASS. I think that's FASS.
Yeah, the Fisheries and Seafood Scheme. So yeah, I was going to say exactly the same as what Dave said. None of our trustees, they all volunteer their time. I'm the only paid employee, and it's not that I want to make millions out of working. I wouldn't be working for Fishing in the Future if I wanted to make millions. But funding is so important, finding a stable way, because if I want to put these events on, I want to make these things happen. But if I spend half my time trying to put claims in for funding and write funding bids, it really does detract away from what we can achieve in the time that I have available as a full-time employee to do my job. Yeah, I looked at what happened in the USA, and what we're starting now to gather our data, but what the USA did is they managed to prove that by coming to events like the events that we run, we are fast tracking people by a decade in terms of experience of engaging in fisheries management and science. So people come to one 3-day event or go to one 3-day event in the US, and it's the same as them working 10 years trying to engage in fisheries management. And they managed to get the data behind that to prove it. They got a scientific paper, and then that was enough for the government to say, right, we need to put our money behind these kind of initiatives, because they recognize that it's a better way for everyone to work together. You know, you've got to lay the foundations. You just can't expect people to come together and already know how to have these hard conversations about how should we do the science and what will that mean and how should we manage a fishery. We don't all have the skills for that.
Yeah, but it's almost like they have got the people in America just say they've done all the hard yards. It's taken them 20 years, but their input is almost helping you to leapfrog that 20 years.
Well, yeah, I mean, Alexa is part of our board of trustees and she's inspirational, and we're really lucky to have her help us form our version of what they do there, something appropriate for us. And yeah, we are hoping we're going to fast track it, and we're looking for the funding to do it. But yeah, it's time and capacity. And it's also a really big thing about it is that I can only really run these events in the winter because I'm not getting a fisherman 3 days out of sea, 3 or 4 days out of sea in April, May, June, July. It's not going to be possible. So it really is. I've got 33 fishermen signed up to this event at the end of February. And I have dozens more that have said to me, I can't take the time off fishing. It's not affordable. It's not feasible. And just to mention as well, so the format of these events that we do, they are co-created. So every fisherman that comes They participate, they help me deliver the event, they look at the agenda for me, they give me feedback, they help connect me with different people. And off the back of that co-creation, it means that I can, it's not a significant amount, but every fisherman that comes along will get paid for their time and expertise that they input into being part of these events that we put on. And we really believe that fishermen are asked for so much of their time for free to participate in things. And every person that's not out fishing usually is getting paid a salary to be part of these meetings and events. And we think the only feasible way forward is to recognise fishermen's time and expertise that they put into these things. The compensation that a fisherman gets for coming to our events does not in any way compare to a good week out fishing, but we hope that it softens the boat. It makes it easier for someone to be able to come along for a few days and build the skills to go back out there and hopefully make the way that we do fisheries management and science a bit better.
And the fact that they're putting and making an effort to come to that days and also giving an input, it must give you huge encouragement.
Yeah, it's actually, David, I don't know if you want to say something, but by the last event we did, the final day was really, as everyone was kind of saying their final words and saying goodbye, it was really emotional. I feel like, I hope it's something that comes to fruition, but I felt like at the end that we'd given hope back to people and we'd given them a reason. You hear so often people say, I don't go to meetings because what's the point? And I really hope that we're giving people a reason again, and that people are going to start to see a point to be involved in these things that are so important, and that if they're not involved, their voices aren't being heard in decisions that are going to affect their livelihoods.
I couldn't agree with you more there, Emma. I had a conversation with a really close friend of mine, a fisherman who was in Scrabster Landing just recently, and I hadn't seen him. Well, no, it was just a few weeks ago, but obviously it was one of the first landings after the new year, and we were catching up, and he was saying that he was at meetings, quota meetings, and in his broad Murrayshire accent, he says, Jim, you never leave that meetings feeling good. So, and it will be emotional because you're talking to people, as you said yourself earlier, that their livelihoods are and their way of life is dependent on it. I totally get you there. I really wonder at times if the powers that be actually appreciate that they take it that serious, but they do. No, I admire what you're doing and just think it's absolutely fantastic. As we fold up, we've covered everything. I would just like to ask, Emma, where can people see what you do and where you do it?
Yeah, so it's one thing we hadn't mentioned is this amazing thing that's come from our board of trustees. We've launched a website last year. We actually launched it at the Skippers Expo. It's called fishingporthole.co.uk. That came from an idea that they wanted to make a one-stop shop for the industry, because they said all of this information is so dispersed about consultations, about open funding, so we've got a website that you can look at and find out about us. But I would actually say my days often get completely derailed because people call me up and just want to know about what we do and how to be more involved. And I have a work phone that people can call me on and ask us questions. They can also pick up the phone if they're too shy to call me. They might know one of our trustees. They just need to pick up the phone and call a trustee. But I work full time and I answer the phone to people, and there's someone behind our social media, and we're there to answer you and to chat to you and tell you a bit about what we do. And then once you've reached out to me, you go on my database and I will be sending you WhatsApps and probably annoying you with everything we've got coming up. But you need to reach out to me if you want to get in the fold.
It's fantastic. And I'll put the website address on the show notes so that people will learn more and follow it. I think it's fantastic. Definitely, I genuinely mean that. I just don't think there's anything beats communication, people talking to each other. Sit down and talk to each other. Talk it over. Discuss it. Best way to solve any problem.
Yeah, and that's like one of the greatest things about our events is when I finally have to feel like, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, I need to go to bed. And I look around and I see there is still sat up fishermen scientists and people in government talking. They're still talking, and I don't know what time they go to bed, but they enjoy each other's company, and they see each other as like genuine people who are trying to do their best at their work, and they realize that we're just all humans, like trying our best, and most of us don't have bad intentions. I can't say for everyone, but we're all trying hard and we're all genuine people. Human connections is just like the most important thing for me, and encouraging those and making sure that people know how to talk to one another in a better way.
Yeah, and I think possibly there's a help for, as I said, my earlier conversation about Alan, and possibly what you're saying today will give him hope that there will be somebody to speak to and there will be somebody listening. We can only hope. Well, thank you very much, both Emma and David. I really appreciated the chat and wish you more success. I'm just really 100% behind what you do. So good luck with fishing into the future. I genuinely mean that.
We hope you come to one of our events sometime.
Definitely. I'm definitely keen to do that, and I will.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you liked it, hit subscribe, share it with a friend, or leave a 5-star review. And if you want to speak with me, visit seafoodmatterspodcast.com.